In this video, I will show you how to replace the front wheel bearings on 2006 to 2018 Toyota RAV4 SUVs. Step number 1. Park the vehicle on a level surface, engage the parking brake and place wheel chocks in front of and behind the rear wheels for safety. 2. On vehicles equipped with aluminum wheels, remove the center wheel cap using a small flathead screwdriver, insert the screwdriver tip around the edge and pry it off completely as shown on the screen. On vehicles equipped with steel wheels, remove the wheel cover by pulling it off with both hands. 3. Release the center axle nut lock using a punch and hammer. Insert the punch into the axle notch and tap it with the hammer until it releases. This will allow the nut to spin freely when you loosen it. 4. Loosen and remove the axle nut using an impact wrench and a 30mm 12-point socket. 5. Raise the front of the vehicle using a floor jack and place jack stands under the chassis for safety. 6. Remove the wheel nuts using an impact tool and a 21mm socket. Once the wheel lug nuts are removed, remove the wheel and set it aside. 7. Release the axle shaft using a brass punch and a hammer. Place the punch in the center of the axle and strike it inward with the hammer to release it. 8. Insert a small flathead screwdriver or pry bar through the caliper window until it fits into the slot in the brake disc. Pry the disc outward to release the pressure on the caliper piston. 9. Loosen the 2 bolts that secure the caliper bracket. Once loose, hold the caliper with one hand and remove the bolts with the other hand. 10. Hang the caliper over the shock absorber spring using a hook or string to avoid damaging the brake line. 11. Once the caliper has been removed, proceed to remove the brake disc by pulling it off by hand. If it is stuck, temporarily install a lug nut and tap the disc outward with a rubber mallet, as shown on the screen. 12. If the disc is still stuck, apply a small amount of penetrating fluid and install 2 screws of the appropriate size in the orifices designed for this purpose. Tighten the screws alternating between them a couple of turns at a time until the disc is completely free. 13. Next, remove the 4 bolts that secure the wheel bearing hub using a ratchet or impact wrench and a 14mm socket. 14. Once the bolts have been removed, tap the damaged bearing outward with a hammer to loosen it. Insert a pry bar into the base of the hub where it joins and pry it out, applying outward pressure to remove it completely. 15. Once the wheel bearing hub assembly has been removed, clean the surface where the hub sits with a towel. 16. Apply a thin layer of anti-seize compound to the CV axle splines. 17. Align and install the new wheel bearing hub assembly in its original position, ensuring the backing plate is properly aligned, and partially tighten the bolts by hand. 18. Tighten the hub bearing bolts, slowly alternating between them in a crisscross pattern a couple of turns at a time until the hub is fully seated. Once the hub bearing is seated, tighten the bolts firmly according to the specifications listed in the owner's manual. 19. Install the axle nut and place a bar horizontally between the wheel studs to prevent rotation while tightening the nut. Tighten it to the specifications listed in the owner's manual. Position the bar so that the end of the bar makes contact with the ground, thus locking the hub in place. Note, the nut can be tightened later once the wheel is installed and the vehicle is on the ground for easier handling. 20. Once the axle nut is tightened according to specifications, lock it by tapping the edge of the nut inward onto the notch on the axle designed for this purpose using a hammer and punch as shown on the screen. 21. Install the brake disc in its original position and temporarily install a nut to prevent the disc from accidentally falling to the ground. Install the caliper mounting bracket followed by the brake caliper in their original position and tighten the bolts firmly according to the specifications listed in the owner's manual. 22. Install the wheel and partially tighten the lug nuts. 23. If you haven't tightened the CV axle nut, lower the vehicle to the ground and tighten the nut according to the specifications listed in the owner's manual. 24. Tighten the wheel lug nuts according to the specifications listed in the owner's manual and lock the center axle nut as described earlier. 25. Install the wheel cover back on. That's how simple it is to replace the front wheel bearings on 2006 to 2018 Toyota RAV4 SUVs.